Hello, everyone. My name is Garret Yount, and I will be presenting on the behalf of the researchers at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, sharing with you a little bit about our pilot study we did looking at healing lucid dreams and working with people that had PTSD. So I'll first explain a little bit about what lucid dreams are. So lucid dreams are dreams where the dreamer wakes up inside of the dream. So you remember, for example, that your body's asleep in bed, but you're in the dreamscape. Sometimes lucid dreams are such that the dreamer is able to control the elements of the dream intentionally. And about 1 out of every 5 person has a lucid dream just naturally, once a month or so. Is a reference for that. So here's a fun graph just looking at for spontaneously occurring lucid dreams. They tend to happen when we're in our younger ages. This was an online survey by pretest-posttest and colleagues. So the fun part is that they can be induced. So one of the ways to induce them are with a variety of devices that are on the market. So we haven't looked at these devices for inducing lucid dreams. They're mainly masks that track the sleep cycle and then activate, either with lights or vibration, those signals to you when you're in the rapid eye movement stage of sleep. And so the rapid eye movement stage of sleep is where most narrative dreams take place. So that's why the devices are made up like that. So this is a Muse device, which we are testing out for some studies. And this is data from my head during the pilot study. So I will talk later about the protocol, which involved wake up periods in the middle of the night. So you can see the white marks are when I was awake, and the sky blue is the REM periods. So you can see just after midnight, I had my first REM period, and then again a little after 2, and then these a few of them before waking in the morning. So again, these devices are on the market, but we're interested in self-induction techniques. So there are self-induction techniques for nighttime, and my favorite is the type where you do a mental recitation. You're basically doing self-hypnosis, get suggestion to yourself during the hypnagogic state. So that's a state between wakefulness and on the way to sleep, where you get all hazy. And so the instruction that I followed for my first lucid dream was to give myself the instruction that I'll look at my hand in my dream tonight. And so then when you're in your dream and you see your hand, you remember, oh, I'm the one that said I would look at my hand. So, you wake up. So I learned this from Carlos Castaneda's 3rd book, Journey to Ixtlan, that he wrote while he was an anthropology student at UCLA. So daytime induction techniques include reality testing. And so the idea behind these are when you're walking through your day, you stop and you test, am I dreaming right now? And the idea is you kind of build that habit, and that might carry over then into your sleeping self. And so then in your dream, you would question it and hopefully figure out you are in a dream. So we can do that right now together. Let's do it. Let's take your hands. Let's try to pull your finger and see if you can stretch it out like a noodle. Well, mine's staying put, so I guess I am awake right now. But these are the kinds of things you can, it's fun just to sprinkle them through the day. Maybe you're in an elevator, think, okay, if I'm dreaming when the elevator opens up, I'll be stepping out into a beach in Hawaii, for example. So many cultures have spoken about these states of mind. The dream of knowledge is the way it was described by the Yaqui Indian mentor that Carlos Castaneda followed around. The Tibetan tradition calls it waking up and sleep, and there are many other names through other cultures. So we're going to focus on the science. So the scientific term for lucid dream was introduced by Frederik van Eden, who's a Dutch psychiatrist. This was in 1913, and it was an address to the proceedings of the Society for Psychical Research. And then 100 years later, there's been research at this point with functional MRI and EEG. And the interesting finding is that the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex lights up during lucid dreaming. Now, the prefrontal cortex is normally shut down during normal dreaming. And so this pink part here, so this is the prefrontal cortex, and this pink purplish part is the dorsolateral portion of that, and so it's on the right side. And so this, this is the folks that did this. This was just in 2012. So the prefrontal cortex has a lot of executive function. It is the highest point in the sensory motor pyramid. So this makes sense since it's lights off during normal dreaming. And we know that there's this sleep paralysis that occurs. So it kind of makes sense that that's shut down. And so the sensory motor activity is shut down so that we can be paralyzed during sleep. Another thing is that it seems to be vital for a sense of self. So that makes sense that it would light up whenever we wake up and bring our self-awareness into the dreamscape. So that's some of the neuroscience behind it. And so now here I want to bring you to what our pilot study was about. What do we want to study? We wanted to study healing lucid dreams. So the idea of healing dreams is also a very ancient concept. And as one example, the Temple of Asclepius was supposed to be a place where people would go and sleep there, and they would be healed in their dreams. And as I imagine many of you know, Asclepius's snake-entwined staff remains an important symbol in medicine to this day. So our goal is to basically combine healing dreams with lucidity. The idea that if with lucidity, there's an ability to basically turbocharge the healing ability of the dream because you have your self awareness and you can have an intent to manifest healing. So that's kind of the idea that we wanted to follow. So we did this by partnering up with an ongoing workshop. I'll describe the workshop a bit. Basically, we recruited participants, all who were experiencing chronic PTSD. Nightmares was a big part of their symptoms, and the goal was for them to learn how to use lucid dreaming to transform their trauma. So we were lucky to work with an excellent instructor, Charlie Morley, who has worked with veterans with PTSD for many years. He was awarded a Churchill Fellowship specifically for this work, and he is authorized to teach Tibetan from the Tibetan Buddhism school. So the workshop was a 6-day workshop attended from home via Zoom. It had a combination of live intensive trainings, up to 6 or 8 hours a day. And in between the sessions, there was homework, of course. There was also nighttime homework. As I mentioned before, these sleep periods where you set the alarm to wake up, record jot down in your dream log, and then listen to an audio recording that kind of reminded you of the dream plan. This would be the dream periods, and you can recognize that kind of maps to the sleep cycle data that I showed you before. So in terms of threatening dream figures, so for nightmares, if a monster is chasing you, the instruction from Charlie Morley in this case was to seek reconciliation. That was the goal, instead of fighting or fleeing. We had a psychotherapist that was part of the team there during all of the sessions, and also in between sessions. James Scurry is a wonderful guy. So our participants, we ended up recruiting almost 50 adults, all experiencing PTSD. Many of them were combat veterans, but also there were non-veterans included. The average age was 48. Mainly, majority of them were female, majority of them are white, which is typical of our the region around our institute. And they all had very significant trauma. So at the entry point, filled out a lifetime trauma questionnaire. And as I said, many were veterans, but there was trauma from other areas of life as well. So all had experienced more than their fair share of trauma coming into the study. So we had self-report questionnaires as the outcomes for the pre-post. So questionnaires before, and then the 6 days of the workshop intensive, and then another questionnaire at the end. So our primary outcome was the PTSD symptom severity, and as measured by the PCL-5, which stands for the Standardized PTSD Checklist for DSM-5. So something that's used in clinical practice. We also included secondary outcome measures in our IANS Discovery Lab questionnaire, which includes various measures of well-being, among other things. And then we used a nightmare experience scale, which again is standardized, and it looks not just at nightmare frequency, but also at the intensity of the distress associated with the nightmares. Then we had some daily questionnaires. So the biggest one was the morning lucidity questionnaire. You wake up and did you have a lucid dream? First question. And if you didn't, then okay, great, let's try again. But if you did, then we want to know what was the level. So we used a questionnaire called the Dream Lucidity Questionnaire that has 12 questions that can start to piece apart some of the subtleties of lucid dreaming that I alluded to earlier. So first, typical one is I was aware that my physical body was asleep. That's kind of like boom, right at the start. But then there are kind of more levels, more intensity. I was aware that all my dream characters were not real people. I recalled some facts or episode from my waking life. So in all, there were 12 questions that basically came up with a score of the level of the lucid dream. And then we had one question that became the determinant for whether we considered the lucid dream a healing lucid dream or not. And it was basically to answer the question, I remember my intention to heal. And if that was a yes, if that was a non-zero answer, then that qualified that dream as a healing lucid dream for this study. Also, as an exploratory part of this, we had 4 of the participants who lived close to the lab do saliva collections every morning throughout the week. So 3 times at 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m., and at noon. And the goal was to compare salivary alpha-amylase diurnal profiles. So salivary alpha-amylase it's basically a biomarker of stress. It's a biomarker of all kinds of stress. It's been used and shown in many other studies. The study that we kind of modeled ours after was one involving PTSD, of course. And this is a study of Bosnian war refugees compared to a group of healthy control participants. And what they found is that, let me just give you the reference here, that the waking response from 8 to 8:30 was the opposite of the normal control. So for controls, you see this decrease, and for the refugees, there was an increase. So our prediction is that the no healing dream situation will be our control. And we would imagine that they would look like the refugees, because refugees have PTSD. All of our participants have PTSD. So without the healing lucid dream, we would expect them to look like the refugees in the other study. And then if they do have a lucid dream, if there was relief from some relief from the stress, we might see that reflected in this biomarker in salivary alpha-amylase. So the results, the biggest surprise right off the bat was how many people achieved lucidity. So we had the majority, 76% of the participants achieving lucidity just within this week. So 37 of them. This was actually quite surprising, especially for a field study. You know, you look in the literature, if you have people in a sleep lab where everything is very well controlled, you can get numbers that approach this, but with people at home, this is a pretty high response rate, a pretty high success rate in terms of achieving lucidity. Moreover, many of the participants who did achieve lucidity achieved more than one dream during the week. And then the maximum, one of the participants had a lucid dream each night of the workshop. So this was exciting, and especially because of this was during the COVID pandemic and everybody's home, and it seemed like it might be kind of difficult to get people to have their dream just within this week when we're collecting the data. But we were pleased with this response. So all in all, we had 106 lucid dreams reported during this period. And the PTSD symptom result was fantastic. Here you can see before the workshop, this is an average of all the participants. Everybody was above the threshold that's generally considered the clinical threshold for PTSD, around 33 as a score on this PCL5. And you can see that immediately following the workshop, it had fallen well below the threshold. And this gain, or this improvement, persisted when we looked a month later. So this type of drop is quite remarkable. It's in the ballpark of some of the good therapeutic responses from other clinical treatments out there. But typically those involve much more prolonged administration rather than just this single week of working on it. So maybe it's somehow concentrated and more potent. So we were quite pleased with this primary outcome. Both of these points were highly significant. So some of these secondary outcomes were the experience of nightmares. Similarly, looking immediately following the workshop, we had a drop in the standardized score that incorporated both frequency and intensity. This was significant in a p-value of 0.01. Well-being, also highly significant improvement. For the experience of nightmares, I don't have it on this chart, but we did look at a month follow-up as well, and this improvement was persisted at the 1 month follow-up. So as I mentioned, the degree of improvement is in the same range as has been reported for group-based psychotherapies that are currently in clinical use in the treatment of PTSD. And importantly, none of these improvements that I've showed so far, the PTSD symptoms, the nightmares, and the well-being, were not specific to achieving lucidity. So that meant that there's perhaps something non-specific to lucidity that's going on in the workshop. And one possibility is, since the workshop included elements of group therapy like social support, interpersonal learning, group cohesion, all these participants were there to hopefully have improvements about their PTSD symptoms. And they were there intensive each day, and then dream sharing circles in the morning. There was a real cohesion that you could feel established among the group. Another aspect is a safe and respectful environment. So these things may have contributed to this dramatic improvement in PTSD symptoms. Also maybe just a non-specific effect due to attention to dream life, or just the knowledge or the opening up to the belief that dreams can allow a gateway into your subconscious mind and therefore self-healing. So these are all things that we need to control for in the next studies. So the salivary alpha-amylase in the end, and we did see a difference between the control conditions. So we're looking at this 8 o'clock to 8:30 before after changes in the slope. And what we saw is, for our control group, we saw positive slope change and negative for the healing lucid dream group. So I said that there were 4 of the participants collecting saliva. So luckily, in a way, 2 of them had a healing lucid dream and 2 of them didn't. So the one healing lucid dream was on the first day. The second participant who had a lucid dream was later in the week, Thursday. So we chose the control subjects, those who didn't have a lucid dream, to match in terms of the days. So we divided it into 2 pairs. There was the early lucid dream, and then a colleague, another one of the participants who didn't have a healing lucid dream. And so we took the saliva collected on the day before and after for the healing lucid dream, and the saliva collected the day before and after for the control in that pair. And similarly, later in the week, on Thursday, the dream was on Thursday. So we took the 3 samples collected on the day before, looked at that pattern, and then the 3 samples collected on the day after, and looked to see if those slopes changed compared to the matching pair participant who didn't have a healing lucid dream, and look at the difference between those. So as you remember, we predicted that it would mimic the findings with the refugees, and that is what we saw. So our control group is a no healing lucid dream situation, and that was, we saw the increase. And with our healing lucid dream group, which again is just 2 people, we saw this decrease, which looks more like the healthy controls from the other group. So these are the p-values on that, and which are impressive. But remember, this is really an anecdotal finding because it's 2 pairs of people. On the other hand, both of them showed it, so it means it's certainly possible and something that we want to follow up on. We find it very provocative. So in conclusion, first thing is that studying healing lucid dreams during COVID is possible. We've got 106 lucid dreams, captured them in our week. People with PTSD can benefit. Compared to baseline values, we saw significant improvements in PTSD symptom scores, and nightmare distress, and in well-being, and other measures as well. So our next step is to do a randomized control study. We'll have a waitlist group. So I want to thank the team. We had a fantastic team, and Helene Wabe is my co-PI. The other members, and especially I wanted to call out to Tadas Stumbries at University of Vilnius, who's a lucid dreaming researcher of many years, and gave us a lot of good advice. Mostly, I want to thank Constantine Cruz and Claudia Wells for supporting the work and their visionary help to make the whole thing happen. So I really appreciate that. So now I'm looking forward to the live version where I get to answer questions. So thank you very much, and let's get to the questions. Bye-bye.